across the sky. But if you look carefully and see the background stars of Pisces, the moon is slipping to the left, the opposite direction, towards the east, relative to the background stars. And that's where Earth's shadow is. So it's moving into the shadow from right to the left, as seen from the United States.
And let's tell people who joined us now in the broadcast who can see this and who can't. Now, I know in the United States, everyone will be able to see totality, but everyone will not be able to see the full eclipse from start to bloody finish. Right?
Yes, because although totality will begin in the easternmost states in New England, those parts that are in the clear, which is essentially nobody, they'd be able to see the totality begin, coming up in only, 20-25 minutes now, but they wouldn't be able to see the moon emerge from totality, because by then the moon will have set, the sun will have risen. So from the easternmost United States, you'll get a good view of it in a place where it's clear, but not the entire eclipse. From the Rocky Mountain states, which is west of there, the entire eclipse will be seen, and beautifully as well. And as you go west into Hawaii and to our friends in Australia, yes, the entire eclipse.
And some people will actually be able to see the sun rising on one horizon and then turn around 180 degrees and see the moon setting while totally eclipsed. That's got to be a very rare thing.
A rare thing and probably an impossible thing to see because, let's face it, the moon is in eclipse, so it's pretty dark. It's not completely black, as we're going to see coming up. It will be red, but in the light of dawn, the daylight in the sky, and with the moon so low, there's something called extinction, where the thick air near the horizon makes the sun or the moon many magnitudes dimmer than it normally would be. I would wager that it would be impossible to see the fully eclipsed moon low in the sky opposite the sun once the sun has risen. But if you could, it's technically up thanks to refraction, which bends the sun's and the moon's image upward by their own widths. In truth, you ought not to be able to see it because the eclipse moon is directly opposite the sun, which means as the sun is up, just coming up, that moon has already set. But thanks to refraction, bending of light, the moon's image is bent upward from its true position below the horizon to appear just above the horizon. So, yes, technically, both would be visible at once, which is quite rare.
And then let me give the non-scientific example of this. A good way that we all see refraction is if you get a soda or a drink and you put a straw in it, and that straw looks like it's in a different place while it's in the water than it does when it comes out of the water. That's because of refraction.
That's because of refraction. Refraction also between the glass and the liquid will make the liquid look like it's in new places. This is why Coke bottles have traditionally been so thick, because it really looks like there's more soda beverage in the bottle than there actually is.
Oh, no one would do that, Bob. All right, well, this is the live coverage of the total lunar eclipse from Slooh.com. Slooh is the community observatory. We maintain 2 observatories with 3 telescopes. 2 of those telescopes are located in the Canary Islands, and one of them is located in Chile. We have a very, very active community of members at Slooh. If you're interested at all in astronomy, even if you just want to get your toes wet, even if you're worried, yeah, I'd be interested, but I don't know that much about it, our community is there, and they want to see people involved and enjoying the nighttime sky. So there's plenty of help, there's plenty of advice. Our community is very active in the Slooh Clubhouse. You can check it all out by going to our website, slooh.com, and Slooh.com. We have an introductory membership offer that's going right now with a discount, so you can try out Slooh for a very small price. And also, if you sign up tonight, we have our Slooh Total Lunar Eclipse t-shirts that we will be giving out with new memberships. So that's all for you if you check out Slooh. And looks like something for you. My name is Jeff Fox. I'm your host tonight, and I am joined by our Slooh astronomer, Bob Berman. And the interesting thing about this is that Bob, though an astronomer, from where you live, Bob, the only way for you to see this eclipse is through us, isn't it?
Yes, because it's completely overcast here. And unless you were up in a plane above the cloud cover, this is the only way to bring it. So thrilled to be here as part of the Slooh team, bringing you this coverage from around the world. People will probably wonder, well, if Slooh has these giant telescopes, giant observatory at the Canary Islands, why are we bringing you the eclipse from there? The answer is simply that it's not visible from here. This is where it's daytime right now, and the eclipse moon is not up in the sky. So we will be able to do that next September 28th. We're going to have a eclipse that will be visible from our main observatory, but not this one.
All right. Well, we have more guests coming up. In fact, coming up in just a couple of minutes, Duncan Kopp, the documentary filmmaker and nighttime sky advocate, and Bob, he's a denier that he's a professional astronomer. Is that right?
He's such a wise guy. He has a PhD in astronomy. His subject is planetary astronomy. He's an expert in that, but he'll say, no, I'm not a professional. And I'll tell him where I come from. If you've got a doctorate in astronomy, you're a professional. But he's a great documentary filmmaker and made some astonishing, very widely regarded films. So we're going to talk to him in a minute.
All right, and of course we're going to be taking more of your questions, which are being sent via Twitter using our hashtag tonight, which is Slooh Blood Moon. John says he's signing up. Oh, John, of course you're going to get a T-shirt. I don't get a T-shirt, but you get a T-shirt. So that'll be coming to you. Anyway, we're thanking everybody from around the world for watching us this morning, this afternoon, this evening on Slooh.com. We're going to break for 30 seconds for a commercial, which many of you will see. Some of you will just see a black screen. But I promise, in 30 seconds, we will be right back. Stay with us. And we're back live with Slooh.com's live coverage of the total lunar eclipse. You're looking at a live picture from Gerard Lazarus, one of our Slooh feed partners. This is coming from Newcastle in Australia, which is in eastern Australia. We also have a live feed tonight, which we're taking from time to time, which is coming from the Griffith Observatory in Los Angeles, high up on Mount Hollywood. Yes, there really is a Mount Hollywood. That's where the Griffith Observatory is. Meanwhile, we're joined now by Duncan Kopp. Duncan, a documentary filmmaker. In fact, Duncan's latest is The Planets, an HD Odyssey. That's a film with the Houston Symphony, which is available on Amazon and on the Houston Symphony website, and also the HD Odyssey app, which is located on the Houston Symphony apps.org website. I hope I got all that right. Good morning, Duncan. Bob, you take it away.
Okay, thanks. Hey, Duncan, good to see you again.
Hello, Bob. How are you?
Good, very good. And of course, you're in Europe, where it's daytime right now. The eclipse is not happening, but nonetheless, you find this interesting, right?
Oh, yeah, no, definitely. I looked at the moon last night. We had a beautiful big full moon over London, and really we didn't get to see the eclipse, but I've seen plenty of lunar eclipses, and they're really interesting. They're really interesting.
So if you're watching our feed, you can see that our feed partners are bringing you the mostly eclipse moon. We still have another 20 or so minutes before the moon is fully in Earth's shadow, and we're expecting then to see Earth's shadow turn from black to red, since our planet casts a red shadow in space. And I think, I'm going to guess, that when you look at an eclipse of the moon, maybe you recall all that you
brightest objects we can see in the sky, and you know, just to see it as a crescent hanging low in the sky or a big full moon, or the way that its faces changes, I think it's really hypnotic. You know, from the age of a small boy, I was always interested, and what really appealed, I think, what I found amazing is people have been there. You know, there are 12 men who have walked on the surface of the moon, and it all happened long ago now. You know, the last person to walk on the moon, Gene Cernan, was December 1972. So there's a whole generation of people now, perhaps, who have not grown up with the idea that people have been there. And yeah, they had some amazing stories. It was great to listen to them and recount their thoughts and feelings. And you know, one that sticks with me, I think it was Jim Lovell who flew on Apollo 8 and also Apollo 13, the ill-fated mission. You know, he said to me, well, we learned a lot about the moon, but what we really learned a lot about was the Earth. Because for the first time, we're able to turn around and look back at ourselves and have this distinct and unique vision of our planet in this sort of black oasis of space. And I think the profundity of that for all of the astronauts who went to the moon was incredible. We take it for granted nowadays, but I think you've got to take yourself back to that time when this was a completely new view.
Yes, absolutely. And I was just realizing, I mean, astronomers are never astrologers. You know, we certainly are not. There's plenty of statistical evidence shows that there's nothing to it. But it just occurred to me that if you were going to be on the moon like the Apollo guys were, and somebody was going to draw up your horoscope chart, wouldn't you have to put Earth in it somewhere? Wouldn't you have to figure out where your Earth was located?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, effectively, you have this big sort of blue marble eye up there that, you know, over the course of time, witnessing you. It's, of course, for the moon. You know, to show spaces as well. And at the moment, during the lunar eclipse, the Earth is new. It would appear black in the sky, and it would be moving over the sun. And I think the other thing that's really interesting about the lunar eclipse is it does one thing that's really fundamental that we forget. It proves that the Earth is round, because you can see the shadow of the Earth on the moon, and you can see that it's round. And I'm looking at the live feed now, and you can see that lovely curvature to the shadow. And I know that was discovered a long time ago, but you know, it's good confirmation.
Absolutely. The ancient Greeks, one of the reasons that they believed that Earth was round is that they were savvy enough to see exactly where the moon is located when it goes into eclipse. They knew it was precisely opposite the sun, which is where our planet casts its shadow. And what always casts a round shadow? Only a ball. Some might say, well, what if we were a disc, a flat, round shape instead? But no, a flat, round disc does not always cast a round shadow. Sometimes it would be sort of edgewise, and we cast a straight line shadow. So because of this, by the 6th century BC, everyone in Greece knew that we lived on a ball. And what's interesting is that other advanced cultures, the Hebrews, the Chinese, were still believing that we lived on a flat planet. We find this in writings of other cultures, while the Greeks, 600 years BC, knew that we lived on a ball. And as you just astutely pointed out, Duncan, here it is, right in front of us all, is the proof of it. This is not a good time to be a flat Earth.
No, it doesn't have good theory at all.
Now, when you look at the moon now, heading towards, we're getting closer and closer towards the time of totality, and we're looking forward to the shadow turning red. If it does, you know, there's certain variations a little bit after the 1980s Pinatubo eruption. The first eclipse after that, I noticed was almost black because there was a lot of dust in the air. So we're going to get a bit of an environmental report card about Earth's atmosphere by the color that the moon turns when it's fully eclipsed. This is very exciting. My question to you, long-winded question, obviously. My question to you is, when you look at the moon, do you think we should be sending people back there?
Oh, definitely. And I think it will happen because there are a couple of answers to this. I think first and foremost, and again, having spoken to people who have been there and had time to reflect on why they went, yes, of course, it was triggered by a Cold War. future is mankind has this inbuilt quest, this inbuilt innate wanting to explore, and it's the nearest heavenly body on our doorstep. It's a 250,000 miles away, but it's a bit like the voyages of discovery. You know, people set out to explore new worlds, but they also set out for another reason. They set out to gather new commodities, spices, new types of vegetables, the potato, fruits, metals, new metals that they could use that they haven't used before. Now, I don't see any reason why that won't be buried in the future, because we know that the moon holds a lot of resources for us, and it's there, and it's not that far. That distance becomes shorter as our innovation and technology allows us to bridge that gap. So I think there's going to come a time when economically it would be viable to go back to the moon. And, I think that time isn't that far away.
Very interesting, very interesting. There are those I can play devil's advocate and say, well, you've just said exploring is the thing that we love to do. Since we've already been to the moon, isn't this a little bit like returning to the same IKEA in Paramus, New Jersey? And we've been there. That might go right over your head, Duncan.
We always go back because there are deals on them. So it's the same. It's that same mentality. If you like a store, you'll go back. And I think with the food, we've only just dipped our toe. We've only just got it wet in terms of this big ocean of knowledge and potential economic gain that the moon could have. I mean, take astronomy, for example. To perform radio astronomy on Earth is becoming so difficult now because there's so much radio noise around. But on the far side of the moon, you've got a pristine environment. So going to the moon will help further our understanding of not just the Earth ring system and ourselves, but also the universe that's out there. And who knows, there could be somebody, I'm pretty sure there is somebody on the planet today alive who will walk on the moon in the future. They may even be listening to us now, absolutely. They may have even used the Slooh telescope to observe the moon. Who knows? But I'm sure they're there, and it's just a matter of time.
Fascinating. And it's a fascinating image that you've just given us. Radio telescopes on the far side of the moon. Now, I don't assume they'd be unmanned, but what if we had like a little setup, a little shack where the caretaker of the telescope was? What would be the most lonely possible job in the world, being on the far side of the moon? As you well know, there's no dark side of the moon like the Pink Floyd album suggested there was, but there is a far side that never gets the Earth. You'd be there, you'd be out of all radio contact with the Earth, you wouldn't have the Earth in your sky. Boy, would that be the most, the loneliest, the most interesting kind of job. Perfect for almost a pathological introvert, right?
Take a few books to read.
Right. Plenty of books and your documentaries and things like that. By the way, we're watching now the final minutes of the eclipsed, partially eclipsed moon. We're seeing the first hints of red in the shadow. We're looking at the last bits of sunlight. I actually like this part of the eclipse, and we're going to focus on this in reverse once the totality is well along. But I think these final 10 or 15 minutes before the moon is fully eclipsed is the strangest, weirdest, and most intriguing part of the event because the colors are finally there. The moon is taking on a phase that you couldn't fool yourself to believing that this is a normal moon now. The earlier part when it was about half eclipse, even though you and I know that that's not the normal shape of the lunar terminator, a lot of people could think, well, it looks a little bit like a half moon. Not now. That doesn't look like any kind of normal crescent, does it?
No, totally. And the other thing that's really exciting is, imagine you were on the moon now. It would be a really weird thing that you'd be seeing. I mean, it would be sort of, you'd gradually see this shadow creep across, and basically you'd be able to feel as it does the temperature drop, because on the surface of the moon there's a great variation in the temperature between the shadows and actually in the sunlight. And as the Earth's shadow comes across the moon, you're going to be plummeted. We're talking about a couple hundred degrees. It's almost instantaneous because there's no
side to the other. What a variation. We're going to return to Jeff Fox now.
Yeah, I just want to bring in a couple of questions. Maybe you guys can toss around from some of our viewers this morning who are also commenting on Twitter. Our hashtag is Slooh Blood Moon. We are looking at all your comments and very much appreciate them. But Sailor Cecil wants to know, how long will the blood moon eclipse last? Now, guys, I know that we start totality at 10:25 and 10 seconds universal time, so that's 6:25 a.m. Eastern time, 3:25 a.m. Pacific time. But how long will this totality last, Bob?
Well, the interesting things about lunar eclipses is that we're also seeing a demonstration of the geometry involved. The moon moves almost its own width through space per hour. We were talking about that with Deborah Bird earlier. It's the only object in the known universe that does that. If you just look at these stats, its diameter is 2,160 miles, its orbital speed is 2,290 miles an hour. That's almost the same number. So we expect it to take an hour to go into our shadow, and it will remain in the shadow for very nearly an hour, and then it'll take about an hour to emerge from the shadow. So it's unique among celestial objects in that regard. But look how red now. The shadow is definitely showing more than subtle hints of the true redness. I mean, you and I walk down the street, or Duncan, even in London, and his shadow looks black in front of him. But our planet casts a red shadow in space. And if you've ever doubted that, we're actually getting that from some of our feed partners who we're seeing as we see just a little bit of uneclipsed moon remaining, as we're now in approximately 10 minutes before totality.
Yeah, and some of one of our viewers has asked via Twitter why the moon isn't fully red, and I think that this is one of these things is that we're going to have to see a reduction in contrast when the moon really is fully engulfed in the shadow, right?
Yes, we will see, and that's it varies from eclipse to eclipse. One of the interesting facets of it is that no two eclipses are exactly the same. The Earth shadow is sometimes black. It was in the first eclipse after the eruption of Mount Pinatubo in the Philippines in the 1980s, because there was so much dust in our atmosphere that very little sunlight kind of refracted into Earth's shadow. At other times, if we have an extraordinarily clear air around the limb and a cloudless region, the moon can be barely darkened. In other words, it won't really turn dark, but it'll just turn a little bit darker than a non-eclipse moon. So this variation is fascinating. It tells us about ourselves. This is the only celestial event where we look at a celestial object in the sky and we learn about our own planet by doing so. So that's coming up in just a matter of minutes now.
If the moon is constantly orbiting the Earth, why don't we have lunar eclipses every month?
Because the moon's orbit has a little bit of a tilt to it. It's got a 5-degree tilt to its orbit relative to its plane. So because of that, usually as it orbits around us, it passes above our shadow or below our shadow. And it only can go into our shadow if it's full or new, just as it's crossing the node point, which is the crossing point from being above or below the ecliptic plane, the plane of the sun and the Earth in space. So here it is in this animation. You're seeing that it's full, but it misses the shadow. And that's the case most months. In fact, that'll happen next month in November, and again in December, again in January, again in February. But then in April, on April 4th, it will be hitting the opposite plane, the one that it's in now, and be able to cross into our shadow once again.
And because it's offline, it's not parallel to our equator, if you will, does that mean that the shadow is different on different parts of the moon?
Well, some parts of the moon are closer to the center of Earth's shadow, and some parts are further away from it, and we're going to see this in the actual darkening of the moon. We'll see a little bit of unevenness, but you brought up a very interesting point. Every major moon and every planet orbits that planet's equator. And the only exceptions to that are Earth and our moon and Neptune and the Triton. Every other moon goes around the planet's equator. Ours does not. It ignores our equator, instead orbits us around in roughly the same plane in which Earth goes around the Sun. Because of that, it changes the geometry and the timing of eclipses.
Duncan, we're going to have to go away and go to a commercial, but I really want, before you go, if you would tell us just briefly about this project that you did with the Houston Symphony.
Certainly, yeah. Well, it's Houston Symphony and I have been collaborating now for about 5 years, and what we thought we wanted to do is marry together HD pictures with live performances of music. And so we got together back in 2009, and the first piece of music that we chose was The Planets by Holst. And there are 7 movements, because in those days only 7 planets were known about. And we put together, I did a production for them using the best quality, high resolution NASA imagery that I assembled for them and made into little vignettes, little movies. And of course they play along with the music. And so we perform that, and other orchestras around the globe. And we're going on with, we made a second called Earth. That actually gets released in terms of the DVD and the Blu-ray very soon. And then the third of the trilogy is Cosmos. And all the time we're using different pieces of classical music, and with the classical music we put together these amazing, incredible images that have been brought back by NASA and ESA, and it's great fun. It really brings these pictures alive, and it brings the music alive too, so it's great synergy going on there. Terrific fun.
All right, well, thank you so much, Duncan. We appreciate you this morning. We're going to take a really quick commercial break. Some of you will just see a black screen for 30 seconds, but we will be back in 30 seconds, because coming up at 25 after the hour, and it is now 22 after the hour, so in about 3 minutes, that's when we go into totality. We're back in 30 seconds. Stay with us. And we're back with Slooh's live coverage of the total lunar eclipse, the October total lunar eclipse. We have our Slooh feed partners, including this shot from Gerard Lazarus in Newcastle, Australia. Newcastle, interesting, in eastern Australia, where this eclipse is being seen in the evening as the sun goes down, the moon comes up. Actually, eastern Australia is the only part of Australia that will be seeing this eclipse. And of course, we also have our feed partner at the Griffith Observatory, located in Los Angeles. All right, Bob, so we are now at 3:23 my time, 6:23 your time, and 10:23 Greenwich Mean Time, which means that we're about a minute and a half or so from totality.
Yes, and this is the best. Okay, this is probably the best part of the entire eclipse, as far as I'm concerned. Not the totality. I mean, that's going to be great, but when there's a little tiny bit of direct sunlight still hitting the moon, and yet enough of the moon is eclipsed that we can see the red color of Earth's shadow. Whoa, doesn't get any better than this. I think this is just absolutely fabulous as we look at these live views of the last moments. Now, we said this before, but let's repeat it, that no matter where you are in the world, if you have the full moon in the sky tonight, you're seeing the same thing. The only thing that varies is, where is the sunlight? Does it look to be on the top of the moon, on the right of the moon? That depends on whether you're upside down or not, standing in Australia, from our perspective, upside down, or whether you're here, or whether you're in Alaska. That's what varies, but everybody's seeing the moon in eclipse, except for the half of the world in which it's daytime and the moon is not out. And that's what's preventing it from being seen, not the daytime at all. You can see the moon the full moon simply is not up, it's below the horizon from half the moon. So we're in the final moments before the total part of the eclipse. Very exciting.
And one of the questions that we've gotten via Twitter, our hashtag, by the way, is Slooh Blood Moon. Is there any chance the gravitational effect of the moon is different and affects Earth? And I actually know the answer to this question. This time of the month, it is a big deal, isn't it?
Well, it is, yes, because this is when we get our spring tides. And I noticed that so many people are confused by them that the New York Times made that mistake a week ago and never corrected it. They interviewed some people and they said, yes, spring tides, because they're talking about erosion on beaches, but they referred to it as, yes, in certain seasons of the year, in the springtime, the tides can get bigger and then it'll come up and erode the beaches more. They didn't realize that the term spring tides, that's the tides tonight, because we have a full moon lineup, and so the moon and the sun are pulling along the same line. They're on opposite sides of the sky, but they're not fighting each other the way they do at the half moons, also confusingly enough called the quarter moons. Only in astronomy does a quarter and a half mean the same thing. A quarter moon is the same as a half moon. But that's when the moon and the solar tides fight each other. The moon wins out because its tides are a little bit more than twice as strong as the solar tides. But right now they're added together. So we have what are called spring tides. There's some debate as to why they call them spring tides twice a month. They have nothing to do with the season of spring, and one suggestion is that the water is kind of springing out at you. Another suggestion is that it's kind of like a spring of water, like if you have a natural spring, the water's bubbling up toward you. So one or the other, the margin to the term, but yes, the tides are stronger today, and especially tomorrow, because they usually require one day the Earth's oceans to catch up with the influence of the moon and the sun. So tomorrow is when you'll actually see the strongest tides from this event.
All right, we've got another question from Twitter, from Sovine. Will the Draconoid meteor shower will be viewable as the total lunar eclipse occurs? Now, this is one of the not major meteor showers of the year, but the Draconoid's a well-known, well-predicted meteor shower, and this year, unfortunately, came at the full moon. But does this put us off the hook? Will we see meteors tonight?
Yes, you'll see more than usual because, quite right, once the moon is fully eclipsed, as it is now, the light will be so diminished that we'll be able to see background meteors. It's true, it's a minor meteor shower. We're talking about perhaps 18 extra meteors per hour over the background rate. If you really want to get outdoors, any night, midnight is dawn, you'll see 6 an hour. That's
On average.
So there's a little bit of a boost of that background rate tonight.
And we're looking at the moon tonight. Now, when people see the moon setting, which people on the East Coast will see right around, actually right before sunrise, and then it'll get progressively later as you go to the west, the moon always looks really large when it's down on the horizon. And in fact, I was out walking with my wife tonight as the moon was rising here. Now, I'm in Southern California, so we saw the moon come up, and she commented to me how big it looked, and I said, no, optical illusion, right?
Well, it is. It is just a few days past perigee, so it's slightly larger than your average full moon, but you're quite right that that's not what you're seeing. This is the famous moon illusion that makes anything in the sky look enormous when it's low.
Look at that. Hold on, Bob, let me just interrupt you for a second. Look at that shot right now. That's from our Griffith Observatory in Los Angeles. That's gorgeous.
Yes, isn't that? We see the color very nicely, and also a different gradation in the brightness of the shadow. Even though the center of the moon is now fully in Earth's shadow, there's no sunlight directly hitting it. Nonetheless, the left side of the moon looks darker, and that's because it's closer to the center of Earth's shadow. So there's a different amount of sunlight that is hitting the moon. If you're on the moon right now, you're in the center, unseen is the sun, but surrounding the Earth is a ring of fire. All of Earth's sunrises and sunsets are combined into a single solid wedding ring-like circle that surrounds the inky black cameo of Earth. So the sun, although it's behind Earth, thanks to our atmosphere, is creating all this red light from sunrises and sunsets, and that's what's managing to hit the moon at this moment. Gorgeous.
That is really pretty. So basically what we're looking at is the same kind of light that we would see at sunrise or sunset, just reflected onto the moon?
Yes, exactly.
All right. Well, we're taking questions from folks as who are watching us, and also on Twitter. Our hashtag is Slooh Blood Moon, and we'll be taking some of your questions online. We appreciate all you watching. Bob, as I mentioned before, I've been watching the Twitter feed, and we have viewers, certainly a lot of viewers in the United States, who have been weathered out of this event, but also viewers from around the world in many places where the eclipse is not visible because the moon is below the horizon right now. Let me quickly, before we get back to the broadcast, tell you a little bit about who we are and why we're on the internet with this broadcast tonight. Slooh is the Community Observatory. You've heard me say this before. We're an organization with members from the United States and from around the world. And what our members do is, in essence, share 3 telescopes located in 2 observatories. One of the observatories with 2 telescopes is located in the Canary Islands. It is an area that is well suited for astronomy, with a government that is very anxious to promote astronomy. And so in the Canary Islands and near where our observatory is, there are very strict rules to prevent light pollution, to help the seeing be better. We have 2 telescopes there. We have one in the southern hemisphere, enabling our members to see things that you just can't see from the northern hemisphere. And our members schedule times to point the telescope at objects in the nighttime sky. There are no limitations on the amount of reservations that you can book in a quarter, though we allow our members to book 5 or 10 minute increment viewing periods at a time. You can learn more about it on our website, slooh.com, SLOOH.com. We have an introductory membership offer with a discount. If you'd like to go and see if Slooh is for you, it's a very inexpensive way to get involved in astronomy in a very sophisticated way, if you will. And we have our Slooh t-shirt offer right now. For those from the United States signing up for Slooh tonight, we will send you a Slooh Total Lunar Eclipse t-shirt. So check it out at our website. It's slooh.com. We have a very active community of members who participate through our Slooh Clubhouse, and they would love to have you join them. Bob Berman, our Slooh astronomer and author of Zoom, is with us tonight, and Bob is looking at the moon as it's zooming through the sky. Let's set this up, Bob, for those who are just joining us tonight. Why is this night different from all other nights?
Well, we've got a lineup, a perfect lineup of the Earth, the Moon, and the Sun, something called syzygy. You know, they say it's a good Scrabble word, but I'm not so sure. It's got the Z in it, that's nice, but it requires 3 Y's, and there's only 2 in Scrabble, so you have to blow a blank in order to make it. But we got syzygy lineup, 3 celestial objects, and we're going into Earth's shadow, cast a red shadow in space, and so we expect, we have now seen that it did happen. There is some variation, so sometimes the lunar eclipse is not red, but this one is. Rest assured now that everything is right, all is right on Earth. We're not too heavily polluted, or the moon will turn black. So we have a normal looking totality, coppery red. You know, we're calling it blood moon. It's become a popular phrase, but if your blood was really that color, that orangey color, I think you'd have to you should see a hematologist, right?
I would say right away. So, this is something that has happened time immemorial. I assume that there are all sorts of superstitions and tales that have come up because of these lunar eclipses over time.
Yes, particularly puzzling in the era before we knew that Earth was round. We talked earlier with Duncan Kopp in London about how the Greeks were the first to really nail that one. They looked at lunar eclipses like the one we looked at tonight, knew that the moon was opposite the sun, knew that that's where Earth's shadow must lie, and noted that we throw a curved shadow, a round shadow. And there's only one kind of geometric shape that always has a round shadow, and that's a ball. There's even a dish or a disc would have a straight line or an elliptical shadow sometimes. It wasn't oriented perpendicularly to the sun. So they knew that Earth was round. So we're learning all sorts of things from that. But in ancient times, before they knew that, no, these were bad omens. There's few, if any, cultures, I can't think of any, that regarded eclipses as propitious or lucky events. They were always seen as unlucky events, to the extent that in India people wash food but will not prepare food during an eclipse. And particularly pregnant women are advised to not glance at it. This could be very perilous for an unborn child. So many superstitions regarding them. In the modern world, of course, they're lovely. They demonstrate local motion, a shadow. Gives us an environmental report card about our own planet Earth. Because if it turns red, the moon does, it shows that everything is normal. Earth is not too polluted at the moment. So, fascinating.
We have Claire, who is watching from London, where the moon has already set, where the sun is up, and where this eclipse is not visible. But thanks for joining us, Claire. And Claire wonders, and Bob, you're going to have to do a little figuring for this one. What would this look like from the International Space Station? And let me just quickly say, unlike geostationary satellites like weather satellites or TV transmission satellites, the International Space Station is in a polar orbit, so it is constantly over different parts of the Earth. What would this look like from there, Bob?
Right, quite so. Well, it's not quite a polar orbit. In other words, it doesn't hit both poles with each orbit. It's highly inclined to the equator, and I know that that's what we mean, just so our viewers are not confused. But it does, because it's not really exactly polar, and the moon does disappear from its perspective with each orbit. So from there, as they circle Earth every couple of hours, they will see this eclipse. They'll get an opportunity to see it through their windows. Unfortunately, because their windows consist of four separate thick glass windows, and obviously, you've got to guard against the vacuum of space and micrometeoroids. It cuts down on the light, it cuts down on the field of view, and they do not have the same good view that we do here on Earth from the International Space Station, but they can see it with each orbit.
And we mentioned before, this is pretty much from the United States to Australia. Hawaii is the center of this, but the rest of the world gets shut out on this lunar eclipse?
Yeah, they're shut out for two reasons. The Earth is blocking it. In other words, the moon is not in the sky, and it's daytime. So this is definitely a Western Hemisphere eclipse, except for Eastern Australia, that's providing this feed. As you know, we were all set up. Our favorite feed for events that are located in this location is from Prescott, Arizona. People there call it Prescott, Arizona. But there's parts of America that aren't normally cloudy, that are cloudy, thanks to some storm moving up from Baja, right? And we have professional meteorologists. People don't know this, but Jeff Fox was for many years a TV meteorologist, so I don't dare talk about weather in front of him because he's the guy, he's the man.
It's Tropical Storm Simon, and it's probably going to hit Baja sometime over the next few days, but it is the cloud shield from that storm that has brought clouds to San Diego, California, and to most of the Mexican-U.S. border, to Arizona. Arizona, as you said, where the observatory is in Prescott, but also to portions of southern Colorado and southern Utah and New Mexico. These are places that would normally be considered really great, and actually, as we've been looking at our Newcastle, Australia feed, there have been, and I think you see some right now, some clouds coming over the moon, or between us and the moon, if you will. There have been some coastal showers predicted all the way from far southeastern Australia, from Tasmania, actually up through the Gold Coast, up toward the Brisbane area in Australia, and Los Angeles, which was also considered to be iffy because of Tropical Storm Simon, has gotten great views tonight from the Griffith Park Observatory. Bob, we're going to take a quick break here. We're going to pause for 30 seconds. Most of you will see a commercial, which is good because I have a family to feed. Some of you will see 30 seconds of black on your screen, but we will be back, and I promise we will show you more pictures live of the total lunar eclipse right here from Slooh.com. So stay with us. And we're back live. You're looking at our feed from Newcastle, Australia. Slooh.com is covering the total lunar eclipse. We have feed partners literally around the world tonight. This feed from Australia, we also have some photos that, or some live images, I should say, that we're seeing from Los Angeles. And the reason that Slooh.com covers this is because we're the community observatory. If it happens in the sky, we are interested in it, as are our members. We'd like to show you this from our telescope located in the Canary Islands, but right now it is light in the Canary Islands, and the moon has set. This is a partial Earth event, if you will. All of the United States see the total portion of this eclipse, though people on the East Coast are going to see the moon set just before the sun rises, so you won't be able to see all of the end part of the eclipse. Well, you will here on Slooh. On the West Coast, you'll be able to see all of the eclipse from the beginning to the very end. And of course, we have our feed partner in Australia, where they also will see the total eclipse. Most of us look at the calendar and think of the calendar as 365 days as the Earth rotates around the sun. But tonight, since we're looking at the moon, let's talk about some calendars that don't depend on the sun as much as they depend on the moon. I had a conversation about this a little bit earlier today with Rabbi Brad Hirschfield, because in the Hebrew calendar, it's the moon that's in control. The Hebrew calendar has a month 7 out of 19 years.
Correct. 7 out of 19 times, and there's reasons for that calculation, which will, it bores me, it'll certainly bore you. So, the goal is to keep seasonal events in line with the seasons, which are a function of the sun, and a calendar that is based on people's
Jewish events of this month, or do they relate to this total lunar eclipse?
Well, by the events of this month, I assume you mean Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, Yom Kippur, the Atonement,
and
Sukkot, which is the Feast of Tabernacles, 3 biblical holidays. The first two often called the high holidays. I know you're in California, don't go crazy reinterpreting that. So, if it was in Colorado, it would be a given that we already were. So here's the way it works. These are peak moments. They are based on the moon, but obviously solar corrected. But I think, if I understand, and I'm far from an expert in events of the night sky, though I appreciate them dearly, this kind of full lunar eclipse requires a kind of alignment in which the Earth is directly and squarely placed between the sun and the moon.
Syzygy is called.
Oh, see, I knew it. You talk to an expert, you get fancy terms. Can I hear that again? That word?
Syzygy.
There we go, syzygy. Okay, so I've learned something. That issue of alignment is very much related to these holidays, and I think very much related to all of us. What does it mean, at least once a year, to get your life aligned properly? To take time out to really think, am I where I want to be? If not, why not? How can I get there? And how do I make time to celebrate that I know I will? Because all of those messages lie at the heart of these holidays. Where am I? How did I get here? Where do I want to be? And the confidence to know that one way or another, I will make forward progress on that journey. So the alignment issues connected to this full lunar eclipse, I think, are right on target and make a great deal of sense. The other piece is that if alignment is half the story, the other half is balance. And while I know this may not make sense in terms of the, in astrophysics or the astronomy of it, it does seem to me that the idea of the Earth sits directly between the sun and the moon, appreciating fully both that sense of the inexorable cycle of the sun that is really there and always there, and the moon that comes into view and passes from view. We see it, we don't see it, is really about not only alignment, but the balancing between the parts of our lives that we really want to be constant, and the parts of our lives that we hope ebb and flow, that they renew, they pass away, and then they come back. And I think every single one of us knows that at different times in our lives, especially when it comes to issues of spirituality and relationships, we want some of each of those, the constant and the ever-changing.
In the BCE times, when the courts were declaring this new month, does this mean that there were, in essence, Judaic astronomers?
It's a great question. Whether or not they deserve to be called astronomers, I don't know. Because, in fact, based on what little written evidence we have from this time period, mostly from, say, 100 years before the time of Jesus through about 200 years after, they weren't experts in the night sky. These were common people who were interested in the night sky. They were interested in trying to serve their community, and they were willing to look up the notice and bring what they noticed to the court. Now, what's interesting is that because they weren't experts, they could get it wrong. And we have the record of some of these debates where witnesses came to the court and the court accepted them. And later that day, another set of witnesses came and they said they saw something that would have invalidated the first set. But one of the members of the court said clearly the first set was wrong, and we have to now listen to the second set. And the head of the court said no. Once we've accepted their testimony, it is real. And we're going to celebrate holidays and live this month based on the first witnesses. I think it's a really powerful story because it suggests to us again eclipses today, a kind of neat balance between technical expertise, without which it's very hard to do much in the world, and the recognition that non-experts with a passion for whatever the cause may be, whether it's declaring new Jewish months or events going on in the 21st century night sky, they are also real players, and sometimes it pays to listen to the non-expert over the expert.
Are there any mentions in Jewish history? Do eclipses occur, and have they been noted?
They have been noted. It's a great question. Not significantly, because more of the certainly rabbinic Talmudic energy is focused on calculating the months and when you see a new moon and all that stuff. But there is an interesting Talmudic source, interestingly, especially because it appears in the section of the Talmud of this rabbinic commentary that basically is the roadmap of Jewish life. In the tractate or section devoted to the celebration of Sukkot, or Tabernacles, the feast that is going to start Wednesday night. Again, call that what you will. And in that, the rabbis say that they acknowledge there are both lunar eclipses and solar eclipses. And they suggest that solar eclipses are a poor omen for the world as a whole. Lunar eclipses are a poor omen for the Jewish people. Now, they were not scientists, and one can be a fiercely devoted traditional Jew and reject rabbinic science. In fact, the rabbis of later generations reject their own colleagues' earlier science, saying, hey, our job is to learn from the best science of the day and fit it into our system, not to impose old pseudoscience on contemporary reality. They don't do that. Why then are they looking at these symbols and trying to interpret them? I think for the reasons we've been talking about. First, they distinguish between the moon and connect it to the Jewish people, and they look at the sun and connect it to the world. They know the larger world looks more at the sun. And I think what they felt is, wow, when the sun, which the whole world, almost the whole world looks to, as its measure of what is eternal and timeless and always present, they get a little nervous when it seems a little small. I don't care about the scientific linkage, but the truth is, whatever we think of is constant in our lives. When it shrinks for us, we do get a little nervous, so they're onto something. And when they look at the moon, the way the Jewish community measures time, and it feels a little out of alignment, even though it's a funny term because we know this is all part of its aligning process, but it's not regular, at least in a narrow enough way that lots of people experience it. They get nervous. And so what I think the rabbis are really noticing is that there is a real tendency to want to rely on certain things appearing as we normally expect them to appear. And that's real. On the other hand, they created a calendar system based on the fact that time isn't exactly like that. And it depends on us what we're going to make of it. So for me, the takeaway at this moment is that both the desire for what's always there and what's not always there are both real. And then it's just a question of what your windows are. How wide of time feels like it's still always there. How narrow in time feels like, oh my God, it's speeding up too fast for me. And of course, those are questions we deal with every day, whether we look to the sky or not.
First of all, Happy New Year. And thank you very much for being with us. And this, I think, the connection between the Jewish faith and lots of other things, and the moon is something I don't think that most people realize. So thank you very much for shining some light on that, Rabbi.
It's really been my pleasure, Jed, and I think you're absolutely right. I think that events of the night sky have been inspiring people probably for as long as there have been people. And to the extent that any of our traditions can help us engage in both being inspired by what's up there and out there and what's deeply in all of us, that's a great thing. And that you're here doing this actually inspires me, so thank you.
So one of the things that I learned when I spoke with Rabbi Hirschfield a little bit earlier was this whole tie-in, Bob, with the calendar, the lunar calendar and the solar calendar. But just to give you an idea how we're all sort of affected by the lunar calendar, if you want to figure out the date of Easter in any given year, it's the first Sunday, after the first Monday, after the first full moon, see the full moon enters into it, after the vernal equinox. So it's the first Sunday after the first Monday after the first full moon after the vernal equinox. So the moon is involved in all of this.
Yes, it's a final vestigial link of the moon on our lives. You know, dates of holidays like Easter and like several Jewish holidays, certainly Muslim holidays, follow the moon. In every other way, sadly, or maybe not so sadly, moonlight has become superfluous, certainly for people in the city where the full moon, you can see it, of course, in the sky, but you don't need the moonlight for your well-being and safety the way we did just a century ago.
And we are now looking at our Griffith Observatory camera, a live feed. Bob, we're going to break for commercial in just a minute, but really quickly, for folks just joining us now, because I know a lot of people on the East Coast of the United States are waking up to cloudy skies. This is the only way they can see it. Tell them what they're looking at.
Well, we're about right in the middle of the eclipse right now of our coverage. My favorite part, actually dramatically, comes in the first 10 minutes after totality is over, and we're talking about maybe 40 minutes from now. But for right now, the moon is as in the shadow as it's going to get, and since we cast a red shadow in space pretty far out, the moon has fully plunged into it. The appearance of a totally eclipsed moon varies from eclipse to eclipse, and this one is right in the middle of normal. So this is kind of a reassuring environmental report card about our own planet Earth. It's not too polluted. It's letting some light refract around the edges of Earth. No direct sunlight is hitting the moon, but sunlight from Earth's sunrises and sunsets are managing to reach it. So we're right in the center now of our total lunar eclipse.
All right, we'll talk a little bit about that uneven lighting. I think everybody notices as we look at this this camera shot that the upper right limb, if you will, as you see it on your computer monitor, is brighter than what we see in the lower left side. We'll explore that with our Slooh astronomer, Bob Berman, coming back in just 30 seconds. Some of you will see commercial, some of you will see a black screen, but I promise we'll be back in 30. And we're back with live coverage of the full lunar eclipse from Slooh.com. Slooh is the community observatory. Our members command our 3 telescopes, 2 observatories, 1 in the southern hemisphere, 2 in the northern hemisphere. They set it on its missions every night. Our members get to look at what they've assigned to the telescope, both in ping files, which if you know about graphic files, that is a type of compression that allows you to see exactly what the sensor chips got from the telescope. Also, FITS files, which allows a lot of very exacting scientific analysis of what we get from the Slooh telescopes. You can find out more, learn all about Slooh at our website, Slooh.com. We have a special right now that if you join Slooh during this broadcast, you will get our Slooh Total Lunar Eclipse t-shirt, and of course we have a special deal where you'll get a discount so you can find out if Slooh is right for you without making a major investment. Bob, let me just quickly go over the times of what we're going to be seeing for the rest of the evening. We have passed the point of the midpoint of the greatest eclipse, which happened at 6:54 and 36 seconds Eastern time. That's 3:54 and 36 seconds here on the west coast, so that's already gone. We start sliding back from the total lunar eclipse to a partial eclipse, slowly but surely, starting at 7:24 Eastern, 4:24 Pacific. Then that partial eclipse ends at 8:34 Eastern, 5:34 Pacific, and finally the penumbral eclipse ends at 10:33 Eastern or 7:33 Pacific time. Bob, let's quickly go through these three phases of the eclipse. The penumbral eclipse, tell me what that is.
That's the eclipse you don't bother with. That's the beat eclipse. That's for the other person. That's not for you. You don't want to bother with the penumbral eclipse. Every object casts a dark shadow and a kind of wimpy outer shadow, and that's our outer shadow. So after the great things we've seen, once the umbral eclipse leaves the scene, that's really the time to go get on with our business. Plus, depending upon where you are in the United States, the moon is, at this point, set in the easternmost United States. It's still up in the west. So if you actually want to see it in person, daylight is sweeping from right to left across the United States. But Jeff, I'm most excited by, now that we're in the very middle of the eclipse, by this uneven lighting that we're seeing.
Yeah, that's what I mentioned before the commercial. So that's not an optical illusion. That's not a problem with the Griffith Observatory camera?
No, those who are watching us and also have your laptops but are also looking at the moon tonight, if you're in the clear, also see the uneven lighting. And that's because the moon is passing into our shadow, not centrally, but a little north of our shadow. Now, the bottom part of the moon, the southernmost part of the moon, is most centrally in Earth's shadow. The topmost part is near the edge of Earth's shadow, where more sunlight is not shining directly on the moon, but is refracted or bent around the edge of Earth. Better to think of it in terms of how it would look if you were on the moon at the moment. If you were a lunar colonist, it's the year 2060, you want to escape the high taxes of Earth, you're going to, of course, some parts of the moon are more pricey than other parts.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so let's say you're on the more pricey northern part right now, where it looks brightest. Well, right now, from there, you are not seeing any direct sunlight on the ground around you. You're not seeing the sun in the sky either. But as you look towards the black Earth in the sky, you can see that the sun is somewhere behind that Earth, lighting up the Earth from behind. One part of the Earth looks really brilliant along the edge, and that's the part where it's most nearly sunrise or sunset, and you're looking at the brightest part of sunrise or sunset, and that light, that's what's hitting that part of the moon. Whereas in the lower part of the moon, the less expensive areas of the moon I live in, there you're looking at the sky and you're seeing the black Earth totally swallowing the sun. The sun appears only a quarter the size of Earth, by the way, from the moon. The sun appears much smaller. So you're seeing this big black Earth. The sun is directly behind it there. And so the ring of fire surrounding Earth, Earth's atmosphere, is only lit up a little bit. The sunrise and sunset ring is a much deeper, darker, dimmer, murkier red. So less light is striking the bottom part of the moon than the top. It's all totally eclipsed. But one of the wondrous things about it is you never know what color it's going to be. We see that it is a coppery red, which is a normal and typical color. And we also see this unevenness in the lighting. You'd see this in person, not just through the equipment that's being used.
I think, Bob, you have seen something that people watching at home have not had a chance to see, and that is from time to time I have been getting out of frame away from the camera because I'm moving over to my window here at the right and looking up. Now, Bob is located in New York State, in the Hudson Valley, north of New York City. I'm located in Southern California, in Orange County, where I'm one of the Real Housewives, and also where we get to see the full eclipse from beginning to end, including the wimpy part that Bob says I shouldn't care about. And the reason that I've been going to the window is because this spectacular view that you're seeing from the Griffith Observatory camera, and by the way, we graciously thank the folks at the Griffith Observatory for allowing us to use their feed. that's exactly what I'm looking out my window, and I got to tell you, Bob, it's way cool.
It is way cool. And so you be our first-hand witness. Does your view, your direct view, does it closely match what we're seeing on our computer monitors right now?
It's actually a little bit dimmer to me, and so I can't see the red quite as vividly as we can with this camera. You know, look, the moon is in shadow right now, so it's really not heavily illuminated. However, I do definitely see, as we see on this camera, that brighter limb, which is located to me in the upper right-hand side, the more easterly side of the moon. That part looks exactly like this, but I think thanks to the help of this camera from Griffith, boy, I'm having trouble with that word, from Griffith Observatory, that we can see this blood red just a little bit more vividly than I can see it in person through my window.
Good, but you do see a reddish color. It's
Yes.
not neutral.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And Bob, we're getting a lot of comments from folks on Twitter. And by the way, our Twitter hashtag is Slooh Blood Moon. Slooh is spelled S-L-O-O-H. So Slooh Blood Moon. But I've just seen from someone in Argentina, from someone in Pakistan. We had somebody in Iraq who checked in a little bit earlier. These people who are not in North America or I guess portions of South America and Australia, they're not seeing this not seeing this out their window like I can. They have to watch it on Slooh. This is only a half-Earth event. Is that right? Is this going to be seen on 50% of the Earth? Do I have that number right?
You do. It's a little bit more than 50 only because as Earth rotates during the eclipse, some people are going to rotate into the view of the eclipse. In other words, we on the East Coast here saw part of it, and so there are people who will see part of it, the beginning or the ending part of it, and that will let somewhat more than half the Earth see it.
And we have this from Miss Cheerful. I love your name. It's amazing. I'm in another part of the world, and I can watch the lunar eclipse live while the weather is shining sun. So, yeah, this to me, this is one of the cool things about the internet. I mean, we are able to bring you this. Actually, Bob, I'm going to do a cheesy tie-in here, but it really reminds me, this is one of the cool things about the Slooh observatories. We give people the opportunity to use our telescopes, if you're a Slooh member, from places where the sun is still up. So imagine, you're an astronomer and you can do your stargazing at a convenient time. Astronomers have never known this. You can actually live real human hours and use the Slooh telescopes, and also, in many cases, because we've tried to position our telescopes where the weather is conducive, you can go and stargaze with our Slooh telescopes while it's cloudy where you are. So it's nice to see everybody all across the Earth checking in and taking advantage of the internet as we are with this broadcast, and as we do with our Slooh telescopes, which get the images back to our members via the internet. And of course, we have our introductory offer now for new Slooh members of the Slooh lunar eclipse T-shirt, and also a discount on your first few months of Slooh membership. Bob, we're going to be seeing the moon come out of this full portion of the eclipse and go back into partial. Which way is that going to be running? What are we going to be seeing as that happens?
Oh, well, that's my favorite part, actually. And let's see if our viewers agree, which is quite different from a total eclipse of the sun, because their totality is everything. You don't need eye protection. A lot of people think, well, eclipse of the sun, you need eye protection. Not for the total part. And there, the fires of geyser-like flames hot pink colors coming out of the edge of the sun and the solar atmosphere or corona following the magnetic field lines and all the other phenomena that make totality in the sun sense a emotion, just a knockout event. Different from the moon. First of all, the totality lasts an hour instead of as little as a few seconds or at most a few minutes in terms of a total solar eclipse. But the lunar eclipse also, the total part is not necessarily spectacularly more dramatic than the partial phase. And so let's take a look in only another 10 minutes or so. When the moon starts to emerge from our red shadow, there will be some pretty fast, dramatic changes, and we're going to see the full sunlight lighting up just a tip of the moon, making it look, to my mind at least, a little like the planet Mars. It looks like it has bright polar caps. The rest of the object is going to be red, and I think that's pretty amazing. We'll see coming up in just 10 minutes as the total part ends. So I think that's right up there with the rest of it. So we'll see. We'll see if everyone agrees.
Bob, Elizabeth H. has asked via Twitter, tell us again why the Earth casts a red shadow tonight.
Yes, well, unlike you and I, who cast black shadows, if you're on the moon, you're seeing the Earth blocking the sun. But because Earth has an atmosphere, unlike you and me, the sunlight behind the Earth is refracted or bent a little bit, and so some of that light, which is red in color because we're really seeing all of Earth's sunrises and sunsets, which form a ring around the eclipsed Earth, as seen from the moon, that light is finding its way into the shadow and hitting the moon, even though direct sunlight is not.
So let me see if I've got this right. If I'm standing on the moon right now, I am looking at the Earth at night, first of all, right? It has to be, any place that's seeing the moon right now is in nighttime. That's number one.
That's correct.
So the Earth that I'm looking at is the dark part of the Earth. I don't know if from the moon you would be able to see lights on Earth or any gradations. I guess not, too far for that. But you would be able to see sort of a circle, a ring around the Earth?
Yes, a beautiful red, deep red ring around the Earth. As I said, all of Earth's sunrises and sunsets forming a single continuous wedding ring-like circle surrounding that inky black sun, and that's what's lighting up the moon. I thought of another way is that Earth casts a red shadow in space. Our shadow goes for about 1 million miles. The moon is about 1/4 of 1 million miles, so it easily fits within it. But, Jeff, Earth's shadow tapers like a chopstick, so that by the time it reaches the moon, it's only about half the width that it started out. So we're talking about tapering from 8,000 miles. It's actually down to about 5,000 miles when it reaches the moon. The moon is only 2,160 miles across, so it easily fits inside that shadow, and that's what we're seeing.
And this picture coming to us live from the Griffith, that's about the 15th time I've mispronounced Griffith, from the Griffith Observatory in Los Angeles. All right, let me get the time into perspective for you. It is right now 4:14 Pacific time, 7:14 Eastern time, 11:14 Greenwich Mean time, and at 11:24, so 10 minutes from now, the total eclipse ends, and we will start seeing the brighter light of the sun more directly shine on the moon's surface. Do I have that right, Bob?
You have that right, and I think the reason you have trouble with Griffith is because thinking about it, are there any other words in English that have a fifth sound, F-I-T-H kind of sound to it? I don't think so. So I don't think we're all used to saying fifth, putting those syllables together. Griffith is maybe unique.
Yes.
Am I getting you off the hook? Probably?
No, I don't think so. I think it's because it's late, because I had a cup of coffee at about 2 o'clock in the morning here Pacific time. But you're looking at this beautiful blood red moon. Now, we see eclipses in astronomy all the time, but we use a different word. Or tell me if I'm getting ahead of myself or I misunderstand. In astronomy, would this be the same as a transit?
No, a transit is...
Thank you for correcting me then. Tell me the difference.
But I see where you're going with that. A transit would be an object that is partially eclipsing another. For example, the most famous perhaps is Venus transiting across the face of the sun. There you have a smaller object, Venus, partially blocking out a larger background object, the sun, and producing a tiny diminishing of the sunlight. In fact, that's how we're finding some exoplanets in other solar systems by watching those stars slightly dimming as a putative planet passes in front of it. So that's a transit, but it is a kind of eclipse.
And so in that same vein, S. Fisher asks, if we're on the moon, would this be a total solar eclipse?
Yes, absolutely. A beautiful total solar eclipse. The difference being that from the moon, Earth appears not the same size as the sun, but 4 times larger than the sun. So the sun vanishes very decisively behind that foreground inky black Earth and is swallowed up, especially from the bottom part of the moon, as we're seeing it live here on our Slooh images. Our feeds are showing us parts of the moon that from those locations on the moon you're seeing the sun centrally behind the Earth. From the top of the moon, if you were located there, you're seeing the sun behind the Earth, but closer to one edge of the eclipse. The sun is eclipsed behind the Earth, but nearer to an edge, so that part of the eclipse is brighter because the atmosphere around Earth is brighter on that section, so more light is being thrown onto the moon from that section. But yeah, it's a total eclipse. Different from ours. We have unique ones from Earth because from here, the moon and the sun appear the same size. This is
That's
true
just
of no...
luck, right?
Oh, yeah, I guess so, because it's true of no other planet in the solar system where from that planet, the sun and one of their moons appears exactly the same size, and that's what lets it cover up the sun so perfectly that we get to see the inner prominences or geysers of nuclear flame shooting from the edge of the sun, so that when the moon obscures the sun as seen from here, doesn't obscure it too much so that it blocks out the juicy stuff closest to the sun's photosphere or gaseous surface. It's just really marvelous that we have that fact that the moon is 400 times smaller in actual fact than the sun, but 400 times closer. So they both appear the same size. I mean, think of that. We only have 2 disks in our sky, 2 circles, the sun and the moon, and they both appear the same half-degree size. True of no other planet.
Let's talk about the moon a little bit, Bob, because I know a lot of the people who are watching us this morning are watching and are not astronomers. We all know that the moon is locked, a tidal lock with the Earth, and because of that, we only see one side of the moon, or actually we see a little bit more than half of the moon. But a lot of people think, well, that there's a light side of the moon and a dark side of the moon. But it doesn't work that way at all, does it?
No, there's a momentary light and dark side, just as Earth has day and night, but underneath that momentary dark side and light side, the moon rotates. Earth rotates famously in just under 24 hours. Now, a lot of people think it's exactly 24 hours, but it's actually 23 hours, 56 minutes, and 4 seconds, a little less than 24 hours. The moon rotates once in 27.32166 days, about 27 1/3 days, but it does rotate. So if you lived on the moon, you would see sunlight, sometimes you would see darkness, sometimes you get about 2 weeks of each. So there's no permanent dark side to the moon, but there is a permanent near side, and that's what we're looking at with all those blotches that produce those Rorschach possibilities.
All right. We're going to come out of totality in about in about 4 minutes. So
Very
let me
exciting, yes.
Let me take care of a commercial now. We'll get it out of the way, and then we'll be able to have this clear time with you. Some of you are going to see black for 30 seconds. Others will see a commercial. But we will be back in 30 right here on Slooh.com. And Slooh.com is back on the air. Hi, everybody. I am Jeff Fox. I'm joined by Slooh astronomer Bob Berman. We are looking at the total lunar eclipse. This live picture is coming to you from the Griffith Observatory in Los Angeles on the side of Mount Hollywood. Yes, there is a Mount Hollywood, and there is a camera on it tonight. And we're being joined now by Jonathan Bradshaw. Jonathan is one of our Slooh feed partners who helps us often with getting these difficult to get feeds. And Jonathan is located in Australia. We have been looking at a feed that comes from Newcastle. But Jonathan, where you are, which is in Brisbane, which is farther to the south, you've had clouds tonight?
Yes, and I have to say thank goodness for Slooh, because I've had a lovely time watching the event myself, live from Newcastle and from Griffith Observatory, so it's been fantastic. Unfortunately, despite all of my preparations to give you a feed myself, the clouds rolled in this afternoon and they could possibly be thicker.
Bob, are you there with us? You want to come and join us with Jonathan?
Yeah. Well, that's a lot of fun. It's interesting that over so much of the Earth right now, our normally clear areas, Prescott Observatory, and our other normally reliably clear areas have not been. Fortunately, as Jonathan says, we have been able to get some feeds from some of our partners. So that's excellent. But there's going to be another eclipse coming up next year, so we're going to have another go at it, Jonathan, right?
And Jonathan, before you answer him, let me just tell everybody, we're now at 22 minutes after the hour. We will actually just about 23 minutes after the hour. And in about 60 seconds from now, we will start to see the moon come out of totality, and you will watch the sunlight once again begin to bathe the moon. I'm sorry, Jonathan, I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
No, that's all right. And of course, just as Bob was saying earlier, the reason that egress is so much more interesting, I guess, is when you're actually watching it standing out in the dark. I mean, an eclipsed moon really is a dark sky object. It's much, much, much fainter. You can see the stars all around that you wouldn't with the bright moon normally. Your eyes have got really sensitized to that darkness, and as soon as it comes out, that bright contrast to the edge of the moon really starts to stand out a little bit in a much lesser form than the diamond ring effect on on a solar eclipse.
All right, we're about 10 seconds away, and there may be a very slight delay in this feed, but you should almost immediately start seeing the edge of the sun begin to brighten up. Now they're reshading the camera there at the Griffith Observatory because there's going to be a great deal of contrast, but you can start seeing, I believe, you tell me, Jonathan, is that what we're looking at in the upper left-hand corner of the moon's limb right now?
Yep, it's really starting to come out now. It's difficult to pick it as clearly as you can when you're standing out there, because of course they've had to readjust those cameras. But there they go again. They're just decreasing the length of the exposure there to try and pick out that detail.
And for you in Australia, I know like I say, we've had our observer from the Newcastle area. Here in the States, this is an early morning event. Trust me, I'm up in the middle of the night. For you, this would have been much more convenient.
Oh, this was the best lunar eclipse in a long while. There was another beautiful one a couple of years back in November, December time. That was fabulous. But this was perfectly placed in the early part of the evening, so from 7 till 9, just perfect. And nice and high in the sky as well. Our last one, we just had to pick out the horizon, so it wasn't overly brilliant from that perspective. But this was a really fantastic event, and a lot of people, a lot of media coverage, people were getting pretty excited about it, particularly in Brisbane.
And Bob, I know this is your favorite part of the eclipse, so I don't want to leave you out here. Talk about what we're seeing.
Well, yes, very high contrast. We're having the sun now popping out on the moon's surface. So if you're watching this live or you're listening to us, if you're in a part of the United States in the clear, you're certainly not on the easternmost part because the moon has already set. But if you're in the middle of the United States heading any place west of there or in Hawaii, you can have the moon in your sky right out your window as long as you're not clouded out. Unfortunately, a lot of people are. But if you're seeing this, you're now seeing the first bit of sunlight starting to strike the edge of the moon. Now, depending upon the exposure that we do, this can be a very dramatic event because it'll look like almost the Martian polar caps, a reddish celestial object and a very white edge to it. So there's something very striking about it. So that the kind of even light, and it wasn't perfectly even, we saw that during totality, but it still was variations on the single theme of being reddish. But now we're jumping up many orders of magnitude. The full moon, after all, is magnitude minus 12.6, which is brilliant. And we're seeing some of that direct sunlight starting to hit the edge of the moon. For the next 5 or 10 minutes, this should be very striking.
Bob, somebody other than Jonathan's dog, that's what I just heard yelping in the background, I believe, wanted to know, when is the next eclipse that we can see from North America?
Yes, well, we're going to get a partial solar eclipse. You know, these things come in families simply because we've got the meeting of the moon and the sun near a node, or a crossing point in the orbit of the two. When we're talking about a three-body system, sun, earth, and moon, we can get shadows from one on the other as long as a new moon or a full moon happens near that even point of where the Earth-Sun ecliptic plane is. So the next one will be on October 23rd. It's just coming up 2 weeks from now. You know, this is the full moon. That'll be the next new moon. We'll have a partial eclipse of the sun. We'll bring that to you here at Slooh. And then on April 4th, we'll reach the other node, the opposite node in the Earth's orbit around the sun, and we'll have another full lunar eclipse. And then September 28th, another lunar eclipse. It's very interesting. This time it was the Hunter's moon, and next year, next fall, we're going to have the Harvest moon. These are the only two named full moons of the year. In fact, I'd be curious, Jonathan, do you call them by those names in Australia?
No, we don't actually. We don't tend to follow the traditional names for seasons as well, particularly.
All right, so Hunter's moon, Harvest moon. That may be a North American thing. I believe they use that in Canada, but we'll double check on that. Certainly we do in the United States. You know, the Native Americans had names for every full moon. It depends on on which tribe. The Sioux and the Navajo and the Hopis all had different names. The same moon that may have been called the Frost moon or the Frost on the Pumpkin moon was called the Bee moon, or different names. But the colonists and the Algonquin Indians tended to use names that we have kept to the present time. And the hunter's moon, the harvest moon, that comes from them. And this is the hunter's moon tonight.
And I believe that we're having just a little bit of a problem with our feed, which we hope to get back. But correct me if I'm wrong, Bob, I believe that this is now file footage that we're looking at of the moon, because it would not be fully illuminated like this at this moment.
We're looking at a hunter's moon, a normally uneclipsed hunter's moon, and looking at the Mariah, or blotches, the dark areas on the moon. And you know, as long as we're doing this, this is a very good topic for us, because any other phase of the moon except for full, tonight we of course have the full moon, a total eclipse of the moon can only happen at the full moon. When you see this, the features that stand out are these dark Rorschach test kind of blotches. Some see a man, some see a woman, some see a dinosaur. Maybe we'll get into that later, maybe we won't. Solidified lava areas back from 4 billion years ago, when there actually was a brief period of time when there was hot lava on the moon's surface.
And our live feed is back. Go ahead, Bob. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
Any other phase of the moon, and like the half moon, and the features are very different. There, the Mariah, the dark blotches, are not very prominent at all, and instead we look at craters and mountain ranges. When the moon is full, those get washed out because the sun is shining straight down on the moon's surface, and so we don't have the shadowing that brings out the kind of relief and the detail that shows all the pock marks, the craters on the moon. So instead of Tycho looking like a beautiful 60-mile wide crater on the bottom of the moon, we were just seeing it as a white spot on the bottom of the moon. So it's a very different appearance during a full moon. So now we're back with our live view of the just finished totality, and as we see the completion of totality, we instead are looking at a very interesting effect, a brilliant sunlit portion of the moon, that is the easternmost part of the moon, that is emerging in the sunlight, and it's coming out of our shadow at a speed of about almost 2,300 miles an hour. That's quite a bit. That's the speed of the moon in its orbit around the Earth. A lot slower than Earth goes around the sun. We travel at 66,000 miles an hour. The moon only moves 2,300 miles an hour. And that's the orbital speed we're seeing. We're actually watching that motion as it removes itself from Earth's shadow. So it's a little bit of a lesson in celestial mechanics.
And let me mention to those of you who can see it both live and also here on the screen, that this observation from the Griffith Observatory camera is reversed in the sky. This often happens with telescopes, with optics, that things are flipped side to side or upside down. In this case, it is flipped side to side because I am looking at the moon myself out my window, and what we see here in the upper left is actually in the upper right-hand side, in the more easterly portion of the moon.
That's right, and it really doesn't matter because in space there's no up or down anyway. For example, by convention, when we say that all the planets go around the sun, and the sun rotates, and the moon goes around Earth, all in the same direction. Well, what direction is that? We often call it counterclockwise because we have a northern hemisphere bias, and we picture things from the north. But our friends in Australia, like Jonathan, they see it reversed.
Jonathan, let's talk a little bit about you, because a lot of people who are watching this are just sort of getting their feet wet in looking at the sky. You're an amateur astronomer. You have dedicated a good deal of your adult, and I assume your kid life to looking at the sky. Tell me how you got started as an observer, as an astronomer.
Yes, absolutely. I've always been interested in astronomy, but the thing that really set me off, it etched in my retinas, was looking at Saturn hanging in the sky through a 6-inch refracting telescope, relatively modest telescope, in Port Macquarie Observatory here in Australia. I was born in the UK, but I was here in Australia on holiday, and at the age of 9 saw that image and was hooked for life, absolutely. And subsequently have just into the science, actually doing some real astronomical science, which is great fun for an amateur.
Yeah, a lot of our members on Slooh are also participating in the NASA's Asteroid Grand Challenge and measuring and looking at asteroids. Tell me a little bit about that. How can an amateur operate in that kind of environment? Don't we have professional astronomers doing that?
We do. We have plenty of professionals who get involved in this, of course. But thankfully, we amateurs have numbers. And also we get to do what we want. Professionals often are forced to, by their managers and their budgets, and to do particular astronomy, particular types of astronomy, and they miss out. They miss out on a lot of interesting work, and amateurs can fill in those gaps. If you're in an interesting location, if you're in Australia, for example, or not a mainstream location, then also with particular events such as near-Earth asteroids, we can find ourselves being one of just a few people in the entire globe that can see these things passing. So on a number of occasions, something which has popped out of the deep south and gone straight across the sky, it's given us the opportunity to actually make some very, very unique measurements as an amateur astronomer, because those professional astronomers haven't been there underneath those objects.
And I understand that right now there's a pretty cool object that you can see in the southern sky that we can't see here, and that's the Siding Springs Comet.
Oh yes. Well, of course, there's a number of good comets coming around all the time. And in fact, talking about amateur science, we have here in Brisbane a prolific comet hunter, Terry Lovejoy, who's discovered, I think, 4 comets.
Oh my, yes. Well, he has them named after him. I didn't realize he was an Aussie.
Yep, he's another fellow Brisbane chappie. We also have a supernova searching team who've discovered between them something over 100 supernovae in the last few years. So there's an awful lot of work that the amateur astronomer does. It's all a matter of application and determination. It's a numbers game. You've got to get out there. You've got to do plenty of observing, and you can do a lot of science with very modest scopes, provided you're interested enough.
And let me tell the folks who are watching exactly why Slooh.com is hosting this show. Slooh is the community observatory. We maintain 2 observatories, one in Chile and one in the Canary Islands, so one in the northern hemisphere, one in the southern hemisphere. We have 2 excellent telescopes in the Canary Islands. We have also our southern sighting, where you can look from our observatory in Chile. Our Slooh members control where those telescopes look, and I like to draw this distinction. I'm not talking about taking a vote with the members. I'm saying that each of the Slooh members gets the opportunity at any given time to make 5 reservations into our telescopes, so you can do sighting. You'll get all the imagery in both ping files and also in what are called FITS files, which is a more scientifically exacting way of getting the information from the telescope. There's a lot to learn and a lot to see with Slooh, including our very active community of members who trade information all the time, often coordinate sighting, coordinate telescope sessions with each other in our Slooh Clubhouse. You can find out all about it by going to Slooh.com, and of course, for those who sign up during this broadcast, we've got our Total Lunar Eclipse t-shirt to give you, and a special deal to make it a little bit easier. But if you're interested in astronomy, this is a really great way to have really great equipment at your disposal. You'll get all the imagery, and you'll control the telescope over the internet, but at a very reasonable price. You won't have to explain to your wife, as I'm sure Jonathan has to all the time, why you're spending all this money in the backyard. What kind of things do you see there in the southern hemisphere that we don't get a chance to see here in the northern hemisphere, Jonathan?
Well, I've got some very bad news for the northern hemisphere, because of course I started off up in the northern hemisphere at 55 degrees north, and that beautiful star Antares was a horizon object almost for me. In the southern hemisphere, there are an enormous, well, as well as having the prime constellations of the zodiac running overhead, which makes them perfectly good, beautiful to watch. We do have magnificent local member galaxies, the Magellanic Clouds, the small and large Magellanic Clouds, which come out at night. The deep southern objects such as Crux, the Cross, the Southern Cross, which is a fantastic object and a very rich part of the Milky Way there, as well as two of the finest, or the finest, globular clusters in the sky, which are Omega Centauri and 47 Tucanae. So we have absolutely the finest view of the night sky objects that you can possibly imagine, plus fantastically dark sky sites, wonderfully dark sky sites, not too far away from the city, and wonderful seeing as well, so excellent atmospheric conditions. Very lucky man.
I think people here in North America don't realize that pretty much everyone who lives in Australia lives near the coast.
Yes, yeah, well, and so if we take a city, Atlanta, for example, Australia probably has the population of somewhere like Atlanta. And the continent itself, Australia as a country, which is a continent, is pretty much as large as North America. So we have this vast country and very, very few people in it, all of which are crowded along a thin line around the country with a few of them on the inside, but not an awful lot. I noted if you ever fly into Sydney from Europe, you'll see the coast. If you cross Broome in Western Australia, you'll see nothing for 2 hours, not a single light for 2 hours. You'll pass over a dot, which is Alice Springs, and travel for another 2 hours before you see another light. Now, you couldn't go across the Gobi Desert and see those fewer people. You'll see them everywhere. Australia is incredibly sparsely populated.
And much of the center of Australia is desert, and so I assume really good for telescopes.
Potentially. It's dusty. Deserts bring dust.
Ah.
And it picks it up in the sky. So a lot of these areas, I've been out on the edges of one of the deserts when one of the dust storms kicks out, and they're pretty impressive things. And you don't want to have any optical equipment anywhere near one of those dust storms when it happens. We do have one large remaining optical observatory, which is at Siding Spring in New South Wales.
And that's where they discovered this comet that I was talking about.
Yeah, that's right. There's a number of telescopes up on the hill there, which it's a wonderful facility, and the largest there is a 3.9 meter mirror that was, fun enough, grounded in my hometown of Newcastle upon Tyne in the UK. So it was built in the UK, grounded in the UK, and I knew the master optician that was in charge of that, and that was shipped out quite some years ago.
Okay, and what we're looking at, Jonathan, right now is a live picture from the Griffith Observatory. For those just joining us, I want to get you set up here on what's going on. We are in the midst of a total lunar eclipse. Actually, we've gone past the totality, and now we're into the partial eclipse. That will run until about 8:34 in the eastern United States, 5:34 out here in California, or 12:34 Universal Coordinated Time, or GMT. Bob Berman, this is the part of the eclipse that you like the best, isn't it?
Yeah, because it's, it looks like it's black now. So what's happening is that the Earth's shadow, which is really red, is starting to look more black, and that's because if we expose our eyes or the camera, not to burn out the bright part of the moon, that means we're going to underexpose the shadow, Earth's shadow. By underexposing it, we lose the red color. So I'd say this is where we start to lose that planet Mars appearance, and we start to get back to a black shadow. And it's going to get more ordinary in a while, but for the moment, look at that shape of that remaining moon, Jeff, and compare that to crescent moons you've seen on all your life, ordinary appearances of the moon. That doesn't look quite normal, does it? It looks weird. You'll never see the crescent moon taking that shape. One reason, we haven't talked about that tonight, Jeff, but look at the two curves. You have the outer curve of the moon's limb as a contrast with blackness of space behind it. And then you have the curve of Earth's shadow on the inner part of the curve. And you can see that those curvatures have different radii. They're parts of different circles. The circle in the background, the moon circle, is a much smaller circle. And the curvature on the inside is part of a much larger circle. And this tells us, without being an astronomer, without knowing anything about astronomy, that the object that's casting it, us, has to be a bigger object than the moon behind it. That's why the ancient Greeks, 600 years BC, knew that the Earth was round because of the edge of the shadow. Only a sphere always casts a round shadow, and they knew our size relative to the moon. So they knew our size, the moon's size, the shape of the Earth, the geometry, and they figured all of this out. We're talking about before even most of, let's say, the Bible was written. So, pretty darn good, the ancient Greeks.
Jonathan, we're going to let you run right now. I will leave you with this. Everyone in the United States thinks everyone with an Australian accent is super sexy. All the women are sexy, all the men are sexy, just by virtue of the accent. So congratulations. We love you. We worship you here in the States.
I could live with that. And would you believe that I got an observatory camera, an old sky camera, sat there just out of view, and the clouds have broken up, and I can actually now see the partial eclipse at the end of the event. So I didn't get to see totality, but I can go away and enjoy the last few moments of it myself, which is live.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us, and thank you for so often being our eyes from down there in Australia. Jonathan has, in many occasions in the past, provided us with beautiful views from his cameras and his telescope in Australia. So we very much appreciate it. It's good talking to you this evening in Australia, this morning here in the United States, Jonathan.
Not a problem. Enjoy your Wednesday. It was an excellent day.
And that's Jonathan Bradshaw, who's in Brisbane, Australia. You're looking at the moon live from the Griffith Observatory in Los Angeles, California. We have gone past the period of totality with this total lunar eclipse. We're now in the portion where the moon is starting to be lit by the sun's full light. We'll talk more about this with our Slooh astronomer, Bob Berman, in just a moment. First, though, we're going to pause for 30 seconds. For most of you, you'll see a quick commercial. For others, you'll see a black screen, but we will be back in a half a minute. And we're back. This is Slooh.com's live coverage of the total lunar eclipse. This picture live from the Griffith Observatory in California, where it is 4:48 a.m. and where the entire lunar eclipse will be seen from beginning to end. Bob Berman, our Slooh astronomer, joins us from New York's Hudson Valley. Bob, where you are now, I know you're under clouds this morning, but even if there weren't clouds, the sun would be up right now where you are, and the moon would be set, right?
Yes, yeah, interestingly enough, both of those happened at precisely 7 o'clock. The sunrise and the moon set were on the minute, 7 o'clock. Actually, the sun is out now, bathing up the hills, which are covered with autumn foliage, with brilliant colors. It's just gorgeous.
Yeah, for those who don't know, this time of year, New York State and New England, all the deciduous trees, the leaves on those trees start turning oranges and yellows and browns as they get ready to fall off. But right now, the northeastern United States is just absolutely beautiful with sparkling fall colors. Meanwhile, let's talk about the color that we saw on the moon a little while ago, Bob, but is not in evidence now. The moon was red. Now we're sort of looking at a black and white picture. Why the change?
That's right. That's right. One of the great things about totality is that color, which you never know what it's going to be. Some eclipses are almost pitch black. Some of them are black. The first one we had after the Philippines Mount Pinatubo erupted in the 1980s was a black eclipse. Sometimes it's gray, sometimes it's dark beige. This one was a normal coppery red. Even though the media is fond of using the word blood moon, it's really not blood red, it's coppery red. And we saw that. Now it looks more black, and that's just a question of exposure. Whether you're using your eye, the Slooh telescopes, or the any kind of camera, if you're going to get a correct view of the sunlit part of the moon, you've got to cut your exposure down. Our eyes do it automatically. So because of that, the red is being underexposed, and therefore the Earth shadow looks black right now.
And for those of you who can see the moon both live and here on the screen, you'll notice that this camera from the Griffith Observatory has actually reversed the moon. So what you're seeing on the left-hand side of your screen is what in reality you would see on the right-hand side, or the more easterly facing side of the moon. That's actually, it's almost a mirror image of what you're seeing here. This is not unusual, right, Bob? We oftentimes will see things in telescopes flip left to right.
Yeah, telescopes flip the optics. Slooh has a idiosyncrasy, a peculiarity of liking to have things correct. In other words, we always show the universe the way it would with north up. And, you know, you can show it that way, but telescopes generally flip the image upside down. Nobody cares, because if you were in Australia or if you were tumbling through space, there's no right or wrong or up or down.
It's all relative anyway, right?
That's right. But just for those who care, yes, that would be the correct view.
And by the way, we have been taking questions from those of you on Twitter. Our Twitter hashtag tonight that we're looking at is Slooh, S-L-O-O-H, blood moon. And we've had people who have been writing in, Bob, from all across the earth. It's pretty amazing to me, all the places that have checked in during this broadcast. This is something, this eclipse, that only has been seen in a little more than half the earth. So much of Asia, pretty much all of Europe, all of Africa has been shut out of this eclipse. Is that standard operating procedure for a lunar eclipse?
Yep, and that's good that half the Earth sees it, because when it comes to total eclipses, you get only the tiniest fraction of the
You're
Earth.
talking about total eclipse of the sun.
That's correct, yes, total eclipses of the sun, and that's why if you ask in any crowd of people, most people have not seen a total solar eclipse. And if you were a stay-at-homer and want to wait for one to come to you, you'll have to wait 360 years on average to get a total eclipse of the sun in your location, but only about 2 to 3 years on average to see an eclipse of the moon. So they're more common.
And we've had a whole cluster of total lunar eclipses. That's sort of unusual, isn't it?
It's very unusual. We're not going to have this at least well into the 2030s, maybe beyond that. I've been consulting a reference and looking year by year going into the future, and I don't see this repeating at least till then. That here in one country, United States, we managed to be on the correct side of Earth for 4 total eclipses of the moon in a row. And this is the second, and we'll have one on April 4th, and we'll have another one next September 28th. That'll be the hardest one. It's kind of cool.
And tell me, is this demarcation between the bright and the dark portion of the moon, does that have a name?
Well, normally it does. The terminator, when the moon is casting its own shadow on itself. For example, let's pretend for a moment that we're looking at a fact crescent and that this was a normal almost half moon in the sky. It almost looks like one. So normally you would see the sunlight coming from the left. Picture this, Jeff. Sunlight's coming directly from the left, and therefore the right side of the moon is the dark hemisphere.
Right.
Not tonight. Tonight the moon is being lit up by the sunlight shining straight down on it. The sunlight's not coming from the left the way it looks, coming straight down on it, and instead we're seeing our shadow, the edge of Earth's shadow being cast on the moon and creating an illusion as if we're seeing a half moon. But instead, because it's a carnival of Earth, it's really, we're seeing the curved Earth shadow falling on the curved moon surface. We're seeing the curved lunar rim or edge against space. So it's really kind of a festival of different diameter curves meeting each other.
And we will be in this partial phase now. It's 4 minutes of 5 here on the West Coast. It's 4 minutes of 8 on the East Coast of the United States, and it won't be until 8:34 Eastern Time, 5:34 Pacific Time, that this partial eclipse will end, and that the moon will fully be bathed in sunlight. Though actually, it won't totally. You and I have gone through this before. There is a part of this eclipse that's really just for astronomy nerds, and no one really notices it in real life.
Right, and even astronomy nerds don't care about that. That's the penumbral part. Since we brought that up a few times, the next time you're walking down the street in sunlight, check out the edge of your shadow, especially the shadow cast by your head onto the sidewalk. And you'll see that there's a blurry edge. Your head casts a blurry edge shadow. That has nothing to do with what you did last night, by the way. Your head shadow is always blurry. And that blurry part is the penumbral shadow of you, your own penumbral shadow. In a nutshell, that's where the sun is being partially blocked by your head on the ground. So the penumbral shadow of Earth is where the sun is just a little partially blocked, and therefore there's not too much of a dimming in that shadow. So what's this umbral shadow? That's what we're seeing now. The big, juicy, black shadow of the Earth where the sun is being totally obscured. In our live view here, it's the lower right of the moon, completely blacked out the sun. The upper left of the moon is totally in sunlight. But in truth, the upper left of the moon is not totally in sunlight. If you were on the moon and you had proper filters so you didn't harm your eyesight, what you'd see is the sun being partially blocked by the Earth. So it looks like full sunlight is on the moon right now on the upper left. It's only partial sunlight that's hitting that part of the moon. So technically, that part of the moon is still an eclipse, but it's in penumbral eclipse. But do we care? I mean, what we're going to say is that the moon is coming out of eclipse, that we've seen part of a moon eclipse, part of it not in eclipse. We're not going to try to convince people that the bottom right is in an umbral eclipse, the top left is in the penumbral eclipse, but it's still being eclipsed because, come on, that's splitting hairs.
All right, I don't know if the kid's question is correct or not, so I'll ask it on his behalf. Talk about the total solar eclipses. Why do the majority of them tend to happen in the southern hemisphere and Southeast Asia? Bob, I've never heard this. Is this correct, or is it wrong?
It's not correct. All areas of the Earth equally get those eclipses, but on any shorter term period, for example, if you look at the track made by the moon shadow as it sweeps over Earth, if you just look at a 5 or 10 or 20-year period, then just the laws of chance come into play, and you may get more eclipses in one part of the Earth than another. But in a longer period of time, they're randomly everywhere.
Are there eclipses with other planets and other moons?
Yes, in fact, we at Slooh are fond of watching the 4 giant Galilean satellites of Jupiter, Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto, cast their shadows onto Jupiter's face. And these are cloud tops, really, but they're still being cast onto Jupiter, and those are eclipses. If you were there, floating in the clouds of Jupiter, very unlikely scenario, but if you were, you'd be seeing the sun eclipse by one or another of Jupiter's moons. So yeah, it happens elsewhere.
All right, Bob, we're going to pause for a little commercial break. It's 30 seconds. Most of you will see the commercial. Some of you will see just 30 seconds of black. And when we come back, we're going to come back with Tarek Malik from space.com, who has more to tell you about what's going on tonight. So we'll be right back. Stay with us. And we're back at Slooh.com. Hi, I'm Jeff Fox, and tonight we're joined by Bob Berman, our Slooh astronomer, and we're being joined in just a second by Tarek Malik from far off and very exotic Brooklyn, as I remember. You know, when I was reading your bio, Tarek, all I saw was that you were an Eagle Scout and you'd been to space camp 4 times. So I'm figuring you're the kind of nerd we like here at Slooh. It's good to have you, and Bob has some questions and discussion with you. Bob?
Yeah, hi Tarek, good to see you again, my old friend.
You too, Bob. You too. And just a correction. I'm sadly in West Orange, New Jersey, not Brooklyn. I would love to be in Brooklyn, but in West Orange we had clouds all night.
Okay, but there's always next time.
Yes.
We'll have you on again because it's always a pleasure. You do great work at space.com.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure. So let's talk about this, and I think what we're going to focus on with you is this very rare, extraordinary actually, fact of having 4 total eclipses visible from at least parts of the United States in a mere 2-year period. I'm thinking back in my whole life, I don't recall, maybe that's happened, but it certainly is rare. So what's going on with that?
Well, yeah, you know, it is rare. In fact, we had a scare earlier this year. There was some folks predicting the apocalypse for this lunar tetrad, that's what they're called. You know, so we usually get a couple of lunar eclipses a year. I think you mentioned that, a total lunar eclipses a year, and you mentioned that earlier. And what's really interesting now is that starting last April, which is our second part of it, we got 4 total lunar eclipses in a row. April, this one in October, next April, and then September, to really kind of enjoy as a treat. It's really the geometry of the moon's orbit around the sun and how we're all lining up for the viewing. And I mean, while it is rare, there's 8 of them in the 21st century alone. The last one was in 2003. But you know, between 1600 and the year 1900, there were none at all. So it's like a 300-year stretch. So it is kind of like a rare treat.
And so why were there none then?
Well, just the geometry of the orbit. You know, the moon's orbit is tilted with respect to the Earth, and I think you talked about that earlier. And just sometimes they just don't line up the way that we would need them to be. The skizzy. You pronounce it a lot better than I do.
Syzygy.
I'll leave it to the expert. You know, so we're, you know, that it doesn't always occur. It's why we get partial lunar eclipses. It's why we get partial solar eclipses too. You know, they just don't have that exact lineup every single time around.
Okay, so let's really get into it for the geeks and the nerds. So here's the moon's orbit. It's tilted 5 degrees or so relative to the Earth-Sun plane. And then the orbit itself revolves. Now, for people who can't picture a tilt, retrograding and precessing, I would ask them to imagine dropping a dinner plate on the floor, and if it doesn't break, it might rattle around a little bit, facing in different directions for a few seconds. It rattles around before it settles flat. Well, that's just what the moon's orbit does. It rattles around, except it takes 18.61 years to do that. So in the course of that, there's going to be a period of time when it's angled in just such a way that the crossing point of its nodes meet the Earth-Sun plane periodically. So to my mind, it would seem, and here's where I'm going astray with this, that every 18.61 years you might get this geometry. But it's not. It's rarer than 18.61 years, and as you pointed out, it didn't happen at all for several centuries. So I think that superimposed on that, there then has to be the coincidence of the Earth turning in such a way that we reach and the moon going around us in such a way that we happen to reach a full moon and a new moon just when the, let's say, the western hemisphere of the United States is facing the right way, just as this thing is happening. And then you get all those things needing to come together, and then you get this tetrad, although tetra means 5, and here we're talking about 4. Right? You think I'm on the right path here somewhere?
You do certainly, make a compelling case, Bob. It is just an oddity of the Earth, Moon, Sun system that this can happen. I mean, just the fact that we get lunar eclipses and total solar eclipses at all is amazing. And for something like this to happen 4 times in a row in a 12-month period is just flabbergasting.
So do you think this will be like, it's going to happen so often that it's going to be, we mentioned IKEA in Paramus, New Jersey earlier. So,
I have been to that IKEA.
Right. I think we all have. So staying with that, since that's such a compelling analogy, staying with that for a while, once you've visited once or twice, you don't really feel that compelled to return really quickly again. We're going to get angry letters, by the way, from IKEA's attorneys, aren't we, about this? But you think people are going to say, hey, okay, they're sort of a dime a dozen, or is this going to hold its magic now that it's happening over and over again?
I think it really does, Bob, depend on the person, right? So at Space.com, obviously we love space, and we know that every lunar eclipse is different, and they all have their own quirks. Maybe you get clouded out or whatever. So they're all really special, especially when I missed the last 2 because of clouds, or just the moon setting behind the mountain behind my house too early. But I think that for the general public, it will either be one or the other. It will be, I've seen 2 now, I can skip these last 2. I'm done with it. I saw it one time. Or, if it's a new person that really just is enthralled by the whole thing, if they watch your great webcast on Slooh, and they enjoy it, I think that it will encourage them to go out. Okay, now we know the next one's on April 4th. I can plan for that. We know the next one's in September. I can plan for that. Maybe I'll buy a telescope or a camera to take a good picture of it. So there's really, it depends on the person and how much just seeing the moon galvanizes them. I mean, it is amazing that the moon is the biggest and brightest target we can look at in the night sky on a regular basis, and it's easy to see, especially with these lunar eclipses.
You're so right. People think, it's just the moon. But through a telescope, through the Slooh telescopes, or what have you, especially any phase except full, it's fascinating. Where do you see this kind of detail? Where do you see, you can look into the crater terrace, the terraces that lead to the floor of Copernicus with that double peaked mountain. And, you don't get tired of that stuff, do you? I don't.
No. Yeah, you never did. There's always something new, and sometimes I think we do. I know I take it for granted when it's shining really bright. If it's just a regular full moon coming through the window and I can't sleep at night because of that, I'm going to be a little annoyed. But when you really do take a look at it, on a cold night, it's here in October, we have a minute to think, and that is a satellite that has been here since the beginning of the planet. It had violent origins. It has these magnificent shows. It can fly out the sun. When you think about it, kind of in that perspective, it's an amazing thing to be able to do. And
sounds like you are pro moon then.
I think, oh yeah.
So you vote on the pro moon platform for the pro moon candidate.
I think so.
So you know what? This is running a little bit afield, but you know there's two camps. One saying that we should return to the moon, even though we've been there, done that, and others who are saying that the money can be better spent with robotic probes, where we get more bang for the buck and do a lot more without jeopardizing the lives of humans. Where do you fall in that controversy?
Well, I'm kind of the spaceship guy at space. I'm very human spaceflight. I started out as a human spaceflight reporter. I would love to see astronauts, walking on the moon, and even if it's a global kind of initiative where it's international, not just the United States, like we saw back in Apollo. But I think robots have their place. We've seen what they can do on Mars, and we know that the technology now can only help astronauts when they get there. I would like to see a melding of two. I think that if you team up the advanced robotics we have today and the drive and ingenuity of people actually there on the ground driving them, you can actually get more science done, more exploration done, more wonder done for the planet.
As we watch the moon now continually coming out of Earth's shadow, we still see Earth's curved shadow. We still see the proof that our planet is a ball. It would be very hard to belong to the Flat Earth Society right now. That would be a very hard case to make. Of course, the Flat Earth people may say we're flat, but we're round-shaped like a dish. But then you'd have to argue that the dish is always aimed, in a perpendicular fashion from the sun, and that would be kind of straining things. So I think we'd have to really say we're a ball at this point, and then there's the proof. Now, all right, going from that tirade to really bringing you back into this, Tarek, there is some thought that human spaceflight, since you're into manned spaceflight, I'm going to take that ball and run with it, going to Mars, that the Chinese, since they have so much cash and they really want to do something prestigious, that they're secretly planning to send astronauts to Mars and not bring them back, which would cut 10 years off the project. If you set up like workshops and foods at that first and send astronauts who volunteered, and then there'd be like the pilgrims, coming to America and not planning to go back, then you could cut a decade off that, and they could really get their first, and the first food on Chinese will be maybe General Tso's chicken or something like that. You think that's paranoid or far-fetched, or do you see that as possible?
Well, I think that China targeting a manned Mars mission isn't too far-fetched. I would be surprised if it was actually a one-way flight, largely just because the feat of sending someone there and returning them back is so much more compelling, because then you've got someone back on the ground that can tell you what it's like to be there. There are one-way trips being planned because of the Mars One project. They've actually got, I think, a short list of 4 volunteers who want to go to Mars and never come back. But as for a national government agency doing it, I would be surprised. Now, China's made some big strides. They're on the moon, right now with their rover that they landed back in December, and they have a concerted push for that too. But I would be surprised if they didn't have a Mars endgame in the works.
Fascinating. Well, time will tell. Tarek, it's always a pleasure having you with us, and I look forward to the next time and joining us here on our live Slooh coverage. I'm going to send it back to our studios and Jeff Fox.
All right, and Tarek, thanks again for joining us. Tarek is heavily involved in space.com, which is an around-the-clock, what's a good word? A treasure trove of everything happening in space.
Anything around or under the sun. Yes.
Exactly. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thanks a lot, Jeff. Thanks, Paul.
Okay. You're looking at a live picture. This one is coming from, well, if you were with us a few minutes ago, we had Jonathan Bradshaw on, who said that the skies had cleared around his home in Brisbane, Australia, and you are looking at his observatory right now, this sky camera looking at the moon in Australia. This eclipse is happening after sunset. Here in the United States, it is happening pre-dawn, or on the East Coast, the sun, or the moon, I should say, has already set. Here on the West Coast, where I am, we will have the moon up for the entirety of the eclipse. Right now, we're in the partial phase. That comes up for another 9 minutes or so, and then the penumbral eclipse goes on. We'll talk more about that with Bob in about a minute. First, though, we're going to break for 30 seconds for a commercial. Most of you will see that commercial. Some of you will have a black screen, but we will be back with live coverage from Slooh in just 30 seconds. Welcome back to Slooh's live coverage of the total lunar eclipse. You're looking at this Australian shot from the southeast coast of Australia in Brisbane, from Jonathan Bradshaw and the Samford Valley Observatory. I'm Jeff Fox, and I'm joined by our Slooh astronomer, Bob Berman. We'll have Bob back on in just a second. First, though, let me remind you that Slooh does these broadcasts because we are the community observatory. We have 3 telescopes in 2 observatories, 2 of the telescopes in the Canary Islands, 1 in Chile, so we have northern and southern hemisphere. Our Slooh members decide where the telescope points for each of its missions. They do that individually. In other words, it's not a vote where you'll say, oh, let's point here tonight. No. Each of our members can make as many as 5 reservations at a time, and by the way, as soon as you've used one of your reservations, then you can get another one. But you can have 5 outstanding reservations to come at any given time. You set the mission. You will get imagery from where the telescope is pointing during your mission, and in fact, you can get the imagery from everyone's mission if you're a Slooh member. And we have a very active community that meets in the Slooh Clubhouse. So if you are just getting started in astronomy, there are people who can answer your questions, who want to help. We have lots of how-tos to make using Slooh as easy as is humanly possible. Because remember, you're not having the telescope in your backyard where it's subject to weather, sky conditions. We put our telescopes in some pretty nice spots where it's good to see the nighttime sky. You can check it out on our website. It's slooh.com, and if you sign up during our broadcast with a discount, we will send you a Slooh Total Lunar Eclipse t-shirt. Bob, we should have you model that sometime. I think that's a good idea the next time we do one of these, for you to be our model. Meanwhile,
Unless you're a 2-chambered car.
it's 18 after the hour, meaning we've got about 6 more minutes before the partial eclipse ends, and then we go to the penumbral, or the less exciting, the kissing your own sister eclipse, if you will. So Bob, tell everybody what we've been looking at tonight and what we've seen. Take me through it again, step by step.
Well, we started out with the moon, full moon, hunter's moon, out in the sky, visible from everywhere that didn't have cloudy weather. And then we had the moon plunge into Earth's shadow. The curved shadow looked black at first, and then as it went further and further in, the moon got lower from the East Coast, but stayed nicely up from the rest of the United States. We had our feeds from Australia and from California, showed the total eclipse, watched the moon turn a coppery red color, and now the moon is emerging from it. Interestingly enough, here in the East Coast, at least where I am, it was totally overcast during the eclipse, and the sky is now clearing beautifully, the sun is out. And in Australia, exactly the same thing happened. It was cloudy for totality, and the sky is clearing. So that leads us to wonder, is there a effect that the full moon has on weather? And the answer is no. Well, the answer that I've seen is slightly, that statistically, somebody's actually bothered to do this, looked at the cloud cover at all phases of the moon and found a slight but significant increase in cloudiness at the time of the full moon. That leads us to wonder why. What could be the mechanism? And here's a possible mechanism. One was theorized that perhaps there is dust in the trail in the moon-Earth path, and that we go through it, and that maybe serves as nuclei for clouds to form. Or it could be that the full moon, Duncan Cook, who we had on, the British astronomer, mentioned that the moon's surface is so hot where the sun is shining, about 240 degrees, that it can serve as a bathroom heater. He didn't use that analogy, I am. Shining its infrared heat on Earth. And in fact, the lower atmosphere, the troposphere, you probably never heard that term before, Jeff, but we call the lower atmosphere the troposphere.
I would think that I had to, that was pretty no one. Thank you.
Actually gets 4/100ths of a degree Fahrenheit warmer reliably at the time of the full moon. 4/100ths of a degree warmer, thanks to the moonlight sending a little bit of infrared our way. Now the moon, in case you wondered, is 450,000 times less bright than the sun. 450,000 times. We get around to 500,000 times less bright. So you wouldn't expect it to have much of an effect, but 4/100ths of a degree, okay, we can believe that. And maybe that's enough to precipitate a slight statistical increase in cloudiness, and maybe that will account, of course it won't. Here's where I'm getting humorous about it, for why the sky is suddenly clearing here in Australia now that the eclipse is over.
No, it's clearing where you are because the front is through. Where Bob is, in the Northeast, there was a significant amount of rain yesterday evening into the early morning hours, and in fact that was the case across New England as well. For those who don't know, our camera shots from Australia, as we are in fall here, they are in spring and heading towards summer. The seasons are reversed south of the equator, so everything is different. And for us here in North America, this was a late night, early morning event. For Australia, this has been an evening event. So as the sun began to set, the moon began to rise. Here it's exactly the opposite. As the moon rose, the sun. Oh, let me get it wrong. As the moon set, the sun rose. I'm trying my best, Bob, but I think I still have it mixed up.
Well, you've been up all night long, heroics to you and to our producer, Eric, producing this from Connecticut, who's also been up all night long to bring the whole world this event. I'm really pleased to see all the people around the world in countries where they couldn't see the snow, in places that were cloudy, and in places that were clear, who enjoy our coverage. Notice that our live coverage continues and that we're seeing, and to prove it's live, you can even see the clouds drifting in a realistic fashion across the face of the still eclipsed moon. There's still a little bit of an eclipse left as the moon emerges from it. So all those legends and the civilizations that thought there was some sort of angry demon taking a bite out of the moon. Well, all's well. Demon is apparently decided to retreat, and the moon is returning to its original fullness.
And it looks like, Bob, if I have the times right, we have another 10 minutes or so for the partial